1/5 were Muslims. But nobody cares about that. And Khalid Yasin, as an American, I have my own tempered opinion about that conspiracy. But this is not the subject today. So I ask all of you to, in regards to your questions that you may have, direct them towards what I have said, and I'll do my best to try to respond in the best way that I can. And keep this in mind, brothers and sisters, that this is a topic that over 136 news agencies are covering on a daily basis. More than 2,748 universities have their opinions about, and that millions of people are talking about. And so Khalid Yasin could not possibly, in 55 or 60 minutes, he couldn't do much except offer a perspective. And that's what I've tried to do, is offer a perspective. Thank you very much. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك ونشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت ونستغفرك ونتوب إليك. If you raise your hands, I'll witness you. I would prefer, to be honest with you, to take some questions from the ladies first, since, men have a tendency to put themselves out first. Let's see if we can take a couple of questions. And I think probably most of the written questions are going to be from ladies. So I'm going to take a couple of questions from the ladies first, brothers, and then I'll take recognize your hands if you don't mind. It is believed that all religions are from the same source. Now, since the world has converted to a global village, there's a need that all the sincere followers from all religions come forward and show humanity a path that can take all of them to eternal success. Are there any efforts going on in that direction? Yes, that effort is called Islam. And I say that the person who wrote that is very articulate, and I ask you to look into, with an open mind and open heart, the Islamic proposition towards world peace, towards individual dignity, and the bringing together of the human beings under one platform and under one universal doctrine, which is called Islam. Thank you. Another question, I think, is also from the sisters. I'm going to take two questions from the sisters, then I'm going to come to the brothers. Is jihad, or was it defensive, and how did the Muslims spread Islam to the world? Those scholars who say that jihad is limited to defensive war themselves are apologetic. No, it's not necessarily a defensive war, because the Khalifa, who is the supervisor, the global supervisor, coordinator of jihad, can determine that there's a necessity to take an offense to the ones who are transgressing before they are able to transgress any further. So no, it is not just a defensive war, because if I knew you were going to rob my bank in the morning, I got the right to come and arrest you at night. And you would agree if your money was in that bank. So if the Khilafah understands that some people are perpetuating injustice, inhumanity, plotting to overthrow, supersede, subvert dignity, honor, property, whatsoever in the world, and his job is to keep the peace, what should he do? As any other moral force or force adjudicating justice, he should act accordingly and not necessarily wait until it reaches his gates or his court, so to speak. How can we make the difference between Islamic jihad? This seems like the same handwriting. I'm pretty good at handwriting here. So you can't ask several questions. I'm not going to do that. That's not fair. How can Islam make the difference between Islamic jihad and terrorism put wrongly under the name of Islam? People just have to study and be objective. I mean, that's the point. If you want to be subjective, you want to be conditioned, you want to be prejudiced, you just want to follow what you hear, then you just keep swallowing what is given to you. But if you want to be objective, then I say read. And that's why more than 100,000 people in the Western world are accepting Islam every year. I said 100,000 people in the Western world, between Europe, North America, and Australia, more than 100,000 are accepting Islam every year because there are people who start to think, start to investigate, start to explore, start to consider. And when they do, they find that there's some substance behind what has been hidden. And I say you should look into it also yourself, that even if you don't become Muslim, at least you should see if there is some substance behind what has been distorted or hidden. Okay, I'll take the question from, first from the brother in the blue there. Yes, I think.
The important thing is to be as brief as possible.
Yes. You mentioned the Iraq and why America went to Iraq and because it had the Caspian Sea. Now all the world, and even the media and Muslim lands is speaking about democracy and every 5 minutes on TV. Now is this war an ideological war to spread democracy, which they say day and night? And is this war against Islam that is mentioned, or is war against terrorism?
Okay, let me just say this, and I'll put it this way. If we look at the word democracy itself, it means ruled by the people. First of all, what amount of people have the right to rule when the law of the Creator has become known to the world? Who has the right to rule? No one has the right to rule except by the justification of the Supreme Creator. That's our position. But let's move it out of this whole thing of this so-called mystified democracy, because contemporary democracy, as it's known in the Western world, is really a political hypocrisy. But it is really capitalism. Now you take the aims and objectives of capitalism and look at it from an institutional point of view, and then you'll see that from a point of capitalism, the war in Iraq, the invasion of Afghanistan, all these different wars and all these things that have been mentioned, they can be explained on the basis of capital altruism, expansionism, imperialism. So I say to you that let's not confuse the idea of democracy, because some people have a sense of democracy, say, well, Islam is a democracy. Well, if you say that Islam is a place where Muslims should have the right to vote, nominate, speak their minds, yes, but that's not democracy in the sense of the way it's played out in the world today. So Islam has some characteristics of what we call democracy, but Islam is not a democracy, because democracy is the rule of the people. And Islam, we say the rule only belongs وَلَهُ الْحُكْمُ وَلَهُ الْأَمْرُ. The hukm belongs to Allah, and the amr belongs only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not to the people. So it is not a war of democracy. It is a war of spreading the values of Western civilization into the world and dominating the rest of the world and the resources of the world for the benefit of Western civilization. That's what it is. Pure and simple.
It's probably the same.
And let me be very clear about an issue here. I'm an American citizen with an American passport and the rights that all Americans have to move about the earth freely and speak my word. And I'm grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that. I'm not grateful to the American government for that, because the American government gives to me as a citizen just like it gives to everybody else as a citizen. So what Allah has given to me as a right and a privilege, I don't abuse it, like some other people think, that because we're in the West, all of a sudden that we can just abuse a privilege that is given to us. I don't abuse it. And I do realize that the right to speak, to move about, to speak my opinion, and to give criticisms to governments or individuals is also a profound responsibility, and one has to act with responsibility and with accountability and what they say. So I'm not going to be prompted by irresponsible people to say something that I shouldn't say here. And I ask Allah to save me from being deceptive or being deceived, from being misleading or being misled. or for saying something which I intend to be dignified, or for somebody to take it out of context and to say it was undignified. I'm just making that disclosure here. Okay, another question. What can we do today as a student population to dispel the misconceptions of Islamic terrorism? First of all, I think that we have to be very fair as Muslims to say that many of the misconceptions and distortions about Islam and Muslims have come from the Muslims themselves. From our own behavior. If you just examine the behavior of Muslims on an ethnic, cultural point of view, some of their own behaviors have contributed towards these misconceptions and distortions more so than the behavior of the enemy outside. Sometimes I believe that the enemy within is more profound and complex than the enemy from the outside. But we keep on pointing to America, we pointing to Great Britain, we pointing to France and the hijab, we pointing to this and pointing to that. But what about the behavior of Muslims? That static, narrow-minded, ethnic, cultural baggage that Muslims display that have nothing to do with Islam. I say, let's turn the light on ourselves and let's reform ourselves. When we are better Muslims, you'll find the image of Islam will also get better. And that's in all fairness. Now, talking about it from the outside, Allah says, Udu'u ila sabili rabbik. Invite to the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That means invite to the Quran, invite to the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, explain tawheed to the people, explain risala to the people, explain social justice to the people, explain Islamic values and principles to the people, and then use your behavior as a proof for what you invite people to and what you explain people to. And that's one of the things that we can do to dispel this whole idea of Islamic terrorism. And Allah, He knows best. What is the concept of Jihad Or Nafs? Jihad Or Nafs is coming from the dhalal, the misguidance, into the huda, into the guidance. To come from the haram, from the corrupt and the unlawful, into the halal. And also from the disobedience into the obedience. And to come also from rebellion into order. All of this is a part of Jihad Or Nafs. And you and I, as individuals, we have to use Jihad Or Nafs to make what is called tazkiyah, to purify ourselves from the tendencies, the inclination of human greed, human excess, human corruption. Make tazkiyah, purify ourselves, reform ourselves, become better Muslims. Because as we do that, we're going to more and more and more polish the image of Islam. And therefore, those who are champions of the Khilafah, when the Khilafah arrives, he will have some followers. Those who are the champions of the Islamic State, first, regulate yourselves before you ask for the world to be regulated. Regulate yourselves, regulate your families. If you can't regulate yourself and regulate your families, what makes you think you're going to regulate the world? I'll take that question back there, yes.
You gave a good summary of the crimes that the West has carried out against mankind in general, but the Muslim Ummah in particular. Now also if you go back to the time of the Spanish Inquisition and the Crusades itself, and the figure you gave, 1.35 million plus AIDS, could really be further stretched out. And in addition to this, I mean, we know from the Quran that Allah tells us that disbelievers will not stop fighting us until we change our deen. What advice can you offer to the Muslims, despite what we witnessed in the reality of the past millennium, plus what Allah has informed us of in the Quran, that still we are looking to the same people and the same organizations which have participated in this terrorism, as you put it, against the Ummah?
You answered your own question. You were very articulate in doing so. I don't think I need to answer. I don't need to add something to what you said. You asked, you made a proposition, you asked a rhetorical question, and inside of asking it, you designed it in such a way that it was a statement. And I agree. That's it. I'm not going to add something else to it, because to add something to it, I might take away, or then I might add conflict to it. I'm not going to do either. I'm going to say you did a good job. How would the Prophet ﷺ tell the Muslims who are oppressed in countries to act? In the proper Islamic manner. That's the answer. The proper Islamic manner is that we follow the behavior of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in all cases, because what did Allah say? He said to us, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, لقد كان لكم في رسول الله أسوة حسنة لمن كان يرجو الله واليوم الآخر وذكر الله كثيرا. He said, there is certainly for you in the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam the what? The most profound, comprehensive, categorical human behavior and example for anyone who will look at him, especially those who believe in Allah on the last day and they're hoping they're meeting with Allah. So I say for non-Muslims, look at the name in your search engines, Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and see if you can find a human being whose life has been more documented in detail than his. You will not find it. Secondly, compare his life with 100 human beings in history that you can find categorically, and you will find without any doubt, irrefutable evidence that his behavior is the most profound, comprehensively, categorically, as an example for anyone to look into, as a father, as a husband, as a leader, as a brother, as a merchant. You see, in every capacity his life is there. And so, if we look to the Prophet ﷺ at times of war, times of oppression, times of starvation, times of whatever, leadership, legislation, adjudication, in every condition, see how he acted. And you will find our example is there. No other example, the human example of the Prophet ﷺ as a messenger and as a prophet. And that's our example. That's the behavior that we Muslims subscribe to, and only the behavior. And that itself is the exposition of the Quran. And we want to know, how do we enact the Quran? Through Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
The questions are a little bit off point.
Okay, some of these questions are a little bit off point. I'll trust the...
Complaining from the floor is the questions I have a large amount of them, but they don't seem to address the issue of attack, that is jihad or terrorism. So if I have one question, I think.
I don't know if it's possible to answer, but I was just wondering if you could give some concrete examples of jihad where you think it's being, I don't know, exercised in the name of the Quran.
In the name of the Quran. Well, let me say this to you, sister. First of all, jihad, in its most simplistic terms, if a person fights an invader into their home, or that comes into their home, protecting their property, this itself is the premise. So wherever in the world where Muslims are protecting their land, their honor, their property, their religion against invaders, this itself is a moral jihad, even if it is not classic. Okay? Now if you want to select, I can give you at least 8 theaters where that is being done. Now it may not be classic jihad under a khilafah, because that would be classic under one global leader, but it is moral jihad. And those, you can choose the theater that you want, because any Muslims in any land who decide they're not going to accept foreign invaders, whether they be Christians, whether they be socialists, whether they be communists, whether they be Jewish, whether they be Hindus, whether they be whomsoever, that are defending their land and their honor and their people and their property against that invasion or that insurgency or that genocide, they themselves are representing moral jihad. That's my statement. Yes, brother.
Is there a definition called holy war in Islam?
There's nothing called holy war. First of all, this whole idea of holy, we don't have the holy Quran, we don't have holy Mecca, we don't have a holy prophet, and there's no such thing as holy jihad. Holy comes from the Crusaders themselves. No, there's nothing called holy jihad, but jihad is sacred because of the moral context of it, but nothing called holy jihad. Subhanahu wa ta'ala would have gave the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam the justification to make war from the very beginning against the kuffar. He didn't. It is moral. And some of the Muslims, they want to look past the morality of jihad into the social political realities of jihad. And so I don't want him or anybody else, you see, to throw it out as if jihad is just a social political reality against non-Muslims who are themselves oppressing Muslims throughout the world, because we Muslims still have to fall within the parameters of morality. And what is morality? Sharia. Behavior. How are we acting without proper behavior? Are we calling for something ourselves that we want to remove? We want to remove injustice, but we are acting in a criminal fashion. For instance, let me just give you a little small statement. Can a Muslim who is eating from the hands